officer side seems to contextualize what we're asking to do in the fact that this is an application for Llalliston, not for California. And that seems to me is critical. How often do you think we'll be at capacity? How often do you think that being at capacity will generate a noise nuisance and problem? We say, frankly, not to anything like the extent that it seems to be presumed to be likely to not only happen, but then cause a problem, which presupposes that, candidly, we can't manage our customers to anything like the standard that we need to. You'll note that it is Nathaniel who is the DPS on the existing license. So you have the owner putting himself front and center of responsibility for this operation. And what we have asked for, I appreciate it's a change. I accept that it is. And I appreciate that all change is threatening. But there has to be some sense of balance, some sense of proportionality here. And I'm sorry, but that is lacking. I think Helen made the point when Geraint had spoken about what the background Welsh Government published noise levels are in the vicinity, that we hadn't conducted a noise survey to present to committee. I mean, do you have a lot of noise surveys conducted in preparation for an application to vary a restaurant license? The first I've heard of it. I mean, we're not a music festival for 20,000. This is not a new build. This has been here, I think the reference was to 1991. We're asking to finesse it. And when I say finesse, let's not forget, and because it seems to me, I'm sorry, but it makes the resident and the officer proposition unfair and unreasonable. We are effectively asking you to limit the permission that national government gave every licensed premises in June, I think it was June of last year. So that currently we can do it to any numbers we like, as long as we don't cause a public nuisance, and to any space that we like, as long as we don't otherwise cause nuisance or problems. And we're saying limit us to 12 on the side, limit us to 18 at the front, limit the hours, control the area, add a load of conditions which, if we breach, will be a criminal offence. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's not an unreasonable application. And the final point is this. There was reference to, in the comments of the residents, a lack of empathy or I think engagement with the community. I mean, I'm afraid I'm bound to make the point. We have 3 resident objectors here, not a community objection. But importantly, if you scroll through to, which we touched on earlier, page 49 in the papers, you have got an extensive letter from Nathaniel Martinez introducing himself, his business, his proposition, and what is proposed. And it's just not fair to say that we're not engaged. It's 2 solid blocks of A4 text giving comprehensive detail. And the idea that there's a disregard here, it isn't right. And we think that the balance here is fairly struck by allowing us to have the application granted as it is now before you, the moderated, much more restricted permission that we've sought today. Thanks very much.
Thank you. There are 2 hands up. I'm not quite sure why, because we were only summarising. But Deborah Rees.
Thank you. Mr. Phipps is talking about this blanket permission for restaurants and cafes to open al fresco. I'm wondering, is he talking about the Business and Planning Bill 2020? Could you tell me that?
As I said, it was only really the summing up.
Yes, sorry, I'm wondering whether he's referring to the Business and Planning Bill 2020, which in fact was introduced by national UK government, but not all sections of it apply in Wales. It's England only. So he's speaking with great authority about how the restaurant is allowed to do very many things with the grant of permission from national government. It isn't the case in Wales. And I'd just like to make that point.
Sorry, can I
isn't
just ask?
speaking with authority.
Okay, so can I just ask if what's being said is that this permission for outside off-licence space does not extend in Wales, then I'd ask you to hear from the licensing officer. If you don't believe me, then hear from the licensing officer.
I'm just reading it off the internet. It's a pavement licence regime, and I work for.
That's not what we're talking about.
I think I hope I can address your concerns about the Business and Planning Act. The alcohol provisions within that legislation apply in England and Wales. The pavement licensing arrangements, which allowed them to, move outdoors onto pavement into town centres, those are split. England went one way, Wales went the other. But the alcohol-related provisions to allow premises to go for off sales applies in Wales.
Yes,
it is. I do appreciate how confusing that is. But it was an all-encompassing piece of legislation. But the alcohol is the national relaxation that Matthew is referring to. I hope that helps.
No, I agree with you. Thank you. I just wanted to make the point that Mr. Phipps is making great claims as to their rights to do whatever they like, basically, and it isn't the case in Wales. He keeps talking about national government. Our national government doesn't make all those provisions. I just wanted to make that point, that there are still conditions to be met here in Wales. Thank you.
Sorry, Deborah. Respectfully, that's wrong. The point that Yvonne is making is that we are entitled to do it. We're not talking about the parts that were excluded from the Wales reforms, which don't include pavement licensing. This is nothing to do with pavement licensing. The point I'm making about off sales being permitted on all unlicensed premises applies in Wales.
No, I'm happy about that. I agree. I know.
So, yeah, I can confirm that what the licensing officer and Mr. Phipps is saying is correct.
Yeah, as I was saying, it is just summarising.
Just one quick point, Mr. Chairman. Where the solicitor was saying about the applicant engaging with the residents, he physically came onto my property and intimidated me on my property, asking me to withdraw applications. So he hasn't been particularly friendly. He hasn't been engaging. As far as I can see, if none of the residents behind have objected, it could very well be as a result of the crime that's been committed on my property during this period. I just wanted to make that statement.
Thank you. Right. Helen, would you like to sum up for shared regulatory services, please?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, just to clarify, I have no objection to the removal of the embedded conditions of the licence, or to the area to include the first floor function room, or to the off sales, and I'm satisfied that the applicant can manage this, and they have offered conditions in their operator's schedule to control the off sales side of it. The hours being applied for the licensable activities have not changed. They are what they are existing, so I have no representations in respect to that. My concerns relate only to the operation of the external areas in relation to the front and the side pergola. I believe the noise from the pergola can be more easily controlled due to some of it being enclosed. However, it is still open, and I believe to 10 o'clock the noise to the property behind, which is literally sort of 7 meters away from the property. So if the committee minded to grant that area, I would request that it's closed at 9:30, in line with what they're asking for the front car park area. I am concerned about the noise from the front car park area. Obviously, I can't say it will cause a nuisance, but obviously I can't say it won't. At the end of the day, if you've got 18 people talking, laughing, socialising, you know, from your neighbours, if your neighbours are out in the garden having a barbecue and there's 2 or 3 of them, it's clearly audible, and it, you know, it can cause a nuisance, and that's what I have to look at. So I have no objection to the pergola area, provided it's closed at 9:30. But my objections relate purely in relation to the external car park area. Just to answer Mr. Phipps in terms of the noise survey, with respect, of course I wouldn't expect a noise survey to accompany a licensing application. The reason I even mentioned that was because the planning agent said in his representations about the noise survey from the Welsh Government. So I was clarifying in terms of what, you know, that particular survey and how they arrived at the noise levels they did, and that in order to truly know the noise, you know, the background levels, you would have to do proper noise survey in accordance with the correct procedures and correct legislation. So, you know, the other conditions I accept. They've offered a condition regarding the noise management plan. I'm not sure if Mr. Phipps has actually presented that to the committee, but I'd like to sort of add to that plan that the noise management plan shall identify all potential noise sources arising from the use of the external areas and the off-sale element of the premises to identify measures and how the noise from those sources will be minimised. The noise management plan will be reviewed upon receipt of complaints and shall be updated accordingly if it is deemed that additional measures are necessary to control the noise source. The noise management plan shall be made available to the licensing authority or any responsible authority for examination at its request. And finally, the other 2 conditions that will be requesting is in relation to the upgrade of the fence to form an acoustic barrier, and that the pergola area be properly glazed.
Helen, obviously we haven't got time, we haven't a chance to write all that you've said. So can you email them to me, please, so that when the committee debating their decision, we can take those into consideration?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Right, over to Deborah Rees to recap, please.
Hello. I'm not sure what you want me to do or say.
But just if there's anything you wish to sum up in relation to what you said.
I would just say it's really out of keeping with a little village like Llalliston. This is an industrial sized development now. It's changed in nature. The drinkers are going to be at the bar. They're not going to be diners. It's just the whole weight of the development. So I would agree with all the restrictions that have been suggested by the Environment Officer. I will back them. Thank you.
Thank you. Alan Daniels, would you wish to sum up, please?
He did make the reference a couple of times to the response we've made is the worst case scenario. I understand that, but based on actual evidence of the function of this restaurant since its opened in 1991, there have been occasions where it has been extremely loud, noisy, it has been booked to a high degree. Christmas time is a good example, the weeks leading into Christmas. Traffic, I know the traffic isn't an issue here, but all those issues, not a worst case scenario, they're an actualization. It has actually happened, and that's even before this new change. Now, I understand with the COVID regulations, this gentleman is looking to maximise his business opportunities, and that's understandable. But when we found out the licensing rules at the moment, and for the last 14 months, we've either had no operation or a limited operation to 10 o'clock at night, I foresee the opportunity there will be that he will seek to maximise what he can. And although it won't be every night until that time, there will be a considerable number of them, particularly on weekends. So I take the point about a worst case scenario. To us, it's not going to be worst case scenario. It's going to be a live-in situation. And if they're going to be operating until 12 o'clock with an extension of 30 minutes, that and the noise that's going to emanate from that, that's going to be quite horrendous to us. And it is going to be life-changing to the residents who live nearby. I think a number of them haven't realised the full effect of what this is going to happen to them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Daniels. Mr. and Mrs. Armstrong.
Well,
Sorry.
Sorry, your microphone's off.
Hi. Sorry about that. We're having technical problems here. We've not done a meeting like this before. In Lalliston, which has about 300 houses, we have 2 pubs, 1 hotel and a restaurant. Do we need a bar as well added into it? I don't think so. There's more than enough hospitality in the village without increasing the numbers. The applicant does have several businesses, successful, I've heard, in the city, on seaside places. This is a village with village life, village people. We certainly don't need the extra stress of other people coming in again. This will become a hospitality hotspot. The previous owner ran it down and sold the business. He was retiring. Then, I say, we've had COVID. If Mr. Martinez gets it going as he wants, he'd be having coffee in the mornings, lunch, afternoon teas, evening meals. This is our lives. We're going to have no peace whatsoever from 10 in the morning till 1 o'clock. From 10 a.m. till 1 o'clock the following morning. So our lives are going to be governed by the Licensing Act. And as a resident, I don't think that's fair. The numbers we've got, COVID's been an awful thing, and yes, businesses have suffered. But once COVID disappears, he can still get the 101 inside. He can still have the numbers outside. Licensing have no control over that whatsoever. It's the fire service and his own fire officer. They could change it into a mega pub, and there's nothing you or we can do unless it comes up for review. I will be checking to see how we review this after the meeting, because I certainly want to review. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yvonne Mitchell.
Sorry, Chair, I was just going to refer perhaps the meeting to the statutory guidance relating to the need for premises, but no doubt Andrea will give you an update on that.
I've picked up, I have picked up that. That is no relevance, obviously, under the Licensing Act, how many premises are already in the village.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So with that, the committee will now adjourn to come to a decision. I'd like to thank everybody for attending today and having the patience and being polite about everything. It's been really welcome. When we adjourn now, obviously people will have to leave, so we need to work out how long we'll need to make the decision, have it typed up, and then return. It's coming up for 1:25 at the moment.
Chair, can I suggest then that we reconvene at 3 o'clock?
Yeah, or would you like a bit longer, just in case?
Yeah, actually, probably about let's make it 3:30.
Let's make it 3:30 then, to reconvene.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, everybody. Speak to you at 3:30. Is it the same link? Presumably, as you just click on the same link, do you?
Julie, can you just confirm, please, that it's the same link?
Yes, if you come in on the same link, we'll all be there. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Cheerio.
Okay.